أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So last week we started the seventh ray, which was an example of what Mi'raj can look like for us. But we were on the intro. And does anybody want to make a summary of last week's topic or whatever was left to them last week? Daratu is not here, so I cannot pick up on her. Next candidate is there. No, so she is. Any volunteer? No. Then Sister Zareen. Good. Okay.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. I don't remember too much, but I will try to maybe summarize what I do remember. I think the overall kind of topic we discussed was sort of like we came from like discussing this conversation between Imam Nursi and this whisper of his that was telling him that, you know, you think the Quran is elevated speech, but you're actually just biased into thinking that. And we went on this whole discussion about how that's like actually not the case, and to take it as the speech of man is like just the complete opposite of what like of the claim that the Quran is elevated. And then here I think we were talking more about sort of like what denial looks like. So that was another thing that was like touched upon, was like what it means to sort of deny the revelation. And so what I understood from that is that you know, like the shaitan or Satan has been able to, even if we say that this is clearly a revelation from our maker, in that previous text, the shaitan made the claim that, so what, I have already deceived so many people, like, and then sort of the argument there was that there are people who just don't accept, like out of ignorance or whatever. And then there are also people who are using their intellect to sort of cover up what the truth is. And so they're being deceived through the use of their mind, and just taken down a path of like denial in that sense. And I think here we also talked about sort of so here I think the main argument I think I remember was that like someone saying that, you know, because I don't see something, like it doesn't like exist. But like the argument here is like you can't say that, you can't really prove that something doesn't exist. Like it's easier to prove something is in fact in existence. And like the example given was that if two people saw like the crescent moon to mark the beginning of like the month, even if everyone else like didn't see it for whatever reason, we would take like the authority of those two people, just because to deny something or to like try to prove non-existence, everyone can have their like own sort of reason as to like why something doesn't exist. Like people can have their opinions. Like in my opinion, I didn't see the moon because actually there was a strand of hair that like fell in front of my eyes, or like I just wasn't outside that night. So there are all these like different reasons that can explain like saying like, oh, I didn't see something or it doesn't exist. But to say something exists, it's like a single like focal thing. Like the moon is there, people saw it, and that is sort of like where that authority comes from. And then I think we talked a bit about furthermore sort of like why do we why does our faith kind of shake when we see these people in like these high places who are like making claims against like God and religion and whatnot? And I think one of the arguments that I remember was that like just as we wouldn't like go to an engineer for a cure to a disease, like we would go to a doctor, why should we go to like a biologist or someone in a similar field about matters of like God and afterlife if they've never even taken the time to even study or like think about it? So I think I think there were probably other arguments, but those were the main ones I remember. Sorry, that was a long summary.
Very, very beautiful. So we covered two major parts. As you said, the first one was about when it comes to denial, numbers do not add up. But when it comes to proof, numbers support each other. And the author was questioning, although like the number of, let's say, unbelievers shouldn't have any value when it comes to my conviction. Unfortunately, in this age, Muslims might feel shaken by so many unbelievers out there. So maybe they are right. So this sort of a thing doesn't have any reality. So this was the first thing. And then came the second part, as you mentioned. So when it comes to, let's say, talking about health, an engineer has no word to say. But when it comes to the meaning and purpose of this existence, which talks about what this existence refers to, the expertise of someone whose only job is to investigate the matter itself has no say there. So a professor of biology, a professor of medicine, a professor of whatever, since their expertise do not look even the slightest bit what life means, where it comes from, what it refers to, then asking them about the creator or their statements about the creator has no value whatsoever. So I shouldn't feel like, oh, if belief was a thing, then he would have supported it. Shouldn't have any effect on us. Okay, go upstairs. Okay, so we were now in the paragraph that starts with the essence of unbelief that opposes the truth of Islam. So I will start from there. If you can find that paragraph. In mine, it's page 127. Okay, go ahead. Sure.
One part that struck me only today, which even though it may appear to be an affirmation, this he's talking about, okay, the essence of the unbelief that opposes the truths of Islam and struggles against them is denial, ignorance, and negation. Even though, so he's talking about unbelief, okay, the denial, ignorance, negation. Even though it may appear to be an affirmation of some kind of manifestation of being, like even though when you listen to them, when you look at them, as if they talk about something exist and making comments about it, right? They say in such and such the world of physics, we show this, right? It sounds like that. Even though it may appear to be an affirmation of some kind and a manifestation of a being, it is in reality negation and non-being. It's just denying something. It's not showing anything. Whereas belief is knowledge and the manifestation of being. It is affirmation and judgment. Every negating aspect of belief, even when beliefs say, there is no such thing and so on, or you cannot do this. Every negating aspect of belief is the gate to a positive truth or the veil covering it. When you look carefully, you will see that it's actually talking about something that exists. Okay, that's it. I think this part is very important. So when to talk about, for instance, the last week we gave an example. Ahmed gave it, I guess. When you have this gene, something happens. When you don't have this gene, something else happens. Like you have blue eyes versus, I don't know, the brown eyes, right? So as if it talks about some the existing thing. I mean, here is the evidence, and say that the genes causing these blue eyes or the eye color. It sounds like they affirming something there and relying on when they say, no, you don't need God. It's genes that creating your eye color. The author says it's actually just a denial. It's not something about that exists. So what I understand from here, so when you say something creates another thing, you have to show a quality that this thing, for instance, genes, have to create something. So that you need to show, right? But such a claim does not do that. Does not show you like, here is the gene, and look at the gene and look at the inside of the gene, you will see such and such knowledge, such and such power, such and such will you have to show. Okay? So that's an argument based on existence. But when you look at the argument, you see that there's no such thing actually. They just say, oh, no, I don't believe there's a God. I don't believe there is a creator that giving you this colorful eye. I think it's gene without any proof, any evidence or whatsoever, right? Yeah, the gene, blue eye, I see the relationship, it's there, yes. But we're talking about creating something. So you have to show me that the gene has such a quality to create something. So denial is always just saying that, no, there's no such thing as God. Nothing more.
Can we say in this case that there was this scientist hypothesized that gene does this, and he couldn't deny this yet. He couldn't nullify it. This is why we say this is how it is. So the evidence was never there. The claim stands as it is, but it was not able to be negated. This is why even their positive claim is like there's no positive claim, positive proof in there. The one that's shown is when I take it away, that's what you showed. When you take it away, it was not there. Yes, this is what you showed, but you didn't show what does it. What does not it is what you showed. So the proof was never done in there. So this is why when he says, even though it may appear to be an affirmation of some kind and manifestation of a being, it is in reality negation and non-being. So the author's claim is very bold in here. Anything of the unbelief is based on just denial, not proof of anything, not affirmation of anything. This way it's not going to add up, he says. But when it comes to belief, it is based on affirmation, confirmation. This is why two people's confirmation are going to add up. And an expert's, especially an expert statement in this domain, would be desirable or useful for me. And then he further expanded unbelief for us in the following paragraph. In short, the convictions underlying unbelief are then of two kinds. So author before starting the journey, he wants to clean up our understanding, because apparently if we don't clean this up, as long as they linger in the back of our head, it's going to prevent us from our journey of Miraj. That's what I'm understanding, why he put this introduction before starting the journey. So the first pays no regard. So the first pays no regard to the truths of Islam. It's an erroneous admission, a baseless belief, and a mistaken acceptance peculiar to itself. It's an unjust judgment. I'm reading from the Seventh Flash. This kind of unbelief is beyond the scope of our discussion. It has no concern with us, nor do we have any concern with it. Like there could be a type of denial, let's say, of oneness of creator. Somebody could come up and say, well, not one God, 5 gods, 10 gods, whatever, like their own version of crooked understanding. For this one, it's their own version of false understanding. They're not concerned with us. We are not concerned with them. This is not worthy even to discuss. The second one opposes the truths of belief and struggles against them. It consists in turn of 2 varieties. The first is non-acceptance. It consists simply of not consenting to affirmation. This is a species of ignorance. There is no judgment involved, and it occurs easily. It too is beyond the scope of our discussion. The second variety is acceptance of non-being, or meaning God does not exist, like that sort of a statement, or afterlife does not exist.
Look, I will prove that there is no such thing as afterlife.
Yeah. It is to consent to non-being with one's heart, and a judgment is involved. It's a conviction and a taking the part of something. It is on account of this partiality that it's obliged to affirm its negation. The negation comprises 2 types. The first type says a certain thing does not exist at a certain place or in a particular direction. This kind of denial can be proved, and it lies outside of our discussion. Huda is not in the room, or Huda is in the room. Like in a specific room, I'm talking about a specific claim. But the second type consists of negating and denying those doctrinal and sacred matters, general and comprehensive, that concern this world, all beings, the hereafter, and the succession of different ages. This kind of negation cannot in any fashion be substantiated, as we have shown in the first matter. For what is needed to substantiate such negations is a vision that shall encompass the whole universe, behold the hereafter, and observe every aspect of time without limits. So this is why, if I'm having this sort of a feeling like, scientists coming from there and they are disproving religion and whatnot, this is not a thing that's possible at all in the first place. Number one. Number two, although they might sound like proving or disproving, they cannot and they do not. So these are important things to clean up our perception. This was what we did last week. Let's start with the second abyss and the means for escaping from it. And now that we have a voice which we missed.
Until where?
I will stop.
The second abyss and the means for escaping from it. This too consists of 2 matters. The first, intelligences that become narrowed by absorption and neglect of God and in sin, or the material realm, are unable to comprehend vast matters in respect of sublimity, grandeur, and infinity. Hence, taking pride in such knowledge as they have, they hasten to denial and negation. Since they cannot encompass the extremely vast, profound, and incomprehensive questions of faith within their straitened and desiccated intellects, their corrupt and spiritually moribund hearts, they cast themselves into unbelief and misguidance and choke. If they were able to look at the true nature of their unbelief and the essence of their misguidance, they would see that, compared to the reasonable, suitable, and indeed necessary sublimity and grandeur that is present in belief, their unbelief conceals and contains manifold absurdity and impossibility. The Risale-i Nur has proven this truth by hundreds of comparisons with the same finality that 2 + 2 = 4. For example, one who does not accept the necessary being, the pre-eternity, and the comprehensiveness of attribute of God Almighty on account of their grandeur and sublimity, may form a creed of unbelief by assigning that necessary being, pre-eternity, and the attributes of Godhead to an unlimited number of beings and infinity of atoms. Or like the foolish sophists, he can abdicate his intelligence by denying and negating both his own existence and that of the universe. Thus, all the truths of belief in Islam, basing their matters on the grandeur and sublimity which are their requirement, delivered themselves from the awesome absurdities, the fearsome superstitions, and the tenebrous ignorance of unbelief that confront them, and take up their place in sound hearts and straight intellects through utmost submission and assent. The constant proclamation of this grandeur and sublimity in the call to prayer, in the prayers themselves, and in most of the rites of Islam, Allahu Akbar, God is most great, God is most great, God is most great. The declaration of the sacred tradition that grandeur is my shield and sublimity my cloak, and the statement of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, his most inspiring communing with God in the 86th part of Jayshan al-Kabir, the famous supplication revealed, footnote, the famous supplication revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which consisting of the divine names is related to possess many merits. O you, other than whose kingdom no kingdom exists. O you, whose praise cannot be counted by his slaves. O you, whose glory cannot be described by his creatures. O you, whose perfection lies beyond the range of all vision. O you, whose attributes exceed the bounds of all understanding. O you, whose grandeur is beyond the reach of all thought. O you, whose qualities man cannot fittingly describe. O you, whose decree his slaves cannot avert. O you, whose signs are manifest in everything. Be you glorified. There is no God other than you. Protection, protection, deliver us from the hellfire. All these show that grandeur and sublimity constitute a necessary veil.
So, okay. So this is the second abyss. Any comments about that? Says it's about grandeur. But he started by criticizing how our capacity narrows down and how grandeur is not fitting due to our narrowed perspective. Any comments about that? Yes.
Something I just read recently just comes to mind, that I saw this question online and someone answered it. It was, what was Allah doing before creating what was he doing before that time? And I feel like this is the kind of perspective that Imam Nursi is talking about, that since we're like so focused on time, it's hard for us to imagine a being that's outside of time. And because, and I feel like that's what they mean by, like, that's an example of the grandeur, that like Allah is not limited by time. And as a human, it's hard for us to comprehend that.
Yeah, so a friend was giving an example with like they were having this conversation with someone, and the friend was saying that, oh, God knows everything, he creates everything. says we were speaking in the outside. The guy then just kneels down and gets a small plant from in between the plants and pulls it up and says, even this one, like he knows even this one, even this tiniest thing. Or he's just saying that he just jumps this way and says, I trick God. Like, would he even know this one? So, like grandeur, because we are sort of imagining some sort of limitedness, I guess. But the author gives some reason for that. He says, intelligences that become narrowed by absorption in neglect of God and in sin, or absorption in the material realm. Okay, the translation goes a little weird. Okay. So narrowed by absorption and neglect. This is ghafla. Or in sin, or getting absorbed in materialist world. What do you think about these three? Like he is counting these three as the causes of why the intellect gets narrowed down. Or does what he says make sense or no? Does it? Okay. Or is it too straightforward? Okay, Qadir has something to say there.
The obvious question, like, why does it narrow down? Like, why when you go to that point, do you start looking upwards, or do you stop looking towards the more meaning of it, and then like your whole purpose is to negate everything that is in front of you? Like, what is the thought process behind saying that, like, you stop at that point, you do not look towards more than that? Like,
But is it the case, first of all, like, do you see this, or like what he explains in here, is it a phenomena that you observe? Like the intellect narrowing down? What does this mean? Like the author claims this, but do you feel this? Do you see that?
like we don't feel that. Like, we would say any good biologist, like, he's an intellectual person, or like the big philosophers, people would say like they're very learned people, and whatever they're talking about, like, they're very well renowned in their fields of sciences. But the author is saying it's narrowed. So yeah, that is also a question for me.
Okay, pass the
They
mic.
don't know anything when you do nothing, like you call them ghafla, ghafla.
Yeah,
They are all learned people.
learned people, not even ghafla. Yeah.
I was thinking about it a little bit more straightforward and thinking, like, I don't know what happened before the Big Bang, so I'm not gonna bother looking. So that's a literal narrowing down. Like, I don't want to look beyond that. So people are limited by the world in general and its limitations, and they're not willing to, like, look outside of it or towards their inside, speak to their creator, or find these messages. So they're only limited by the world.
Yeah, like somebody with having a vast perspective, seeing all the way to Big Bang. Like, is this a narrow mind? What do you think? The guy is even thinking about Big Bang. I am concerned about the end of month, how much money I'm going to make and whatnot. Like this philosopher or this scientist, astrophysicist, thinks about galaxies and everything. Isn't this a wide mind? What do you think? Like, what sort of narrow intelligence is author mentioning here? There was a hand somewhere here. No, I saw another hand somewhere. Therein was about to raise her hand. No. So let's see in our lives how it happens. Like, sometimes as when you focus on something too much, really you get absorbed by it. I guess let's first talk about that. Yes,
Could you explain this? I don't understand.
okay.
You mean the
Yeah.
entire.
Yes.
We start with like why we are coming.
Sorry.
Okay. So, like being absorbed, let's give an example to that. So, let's say, like in the discussions that happened a lot, actually, there was a brother who was, his job is he's a painter, like painting walls. And during the discussions, whenever we gather together, he always gives examples from painting and how to do the job, because his world is about painting. His examples come from there. And when you sit next to him, like 5-10 minutes later, it's about house renovation. It's about which type of paint. Like his world is pretty much with that. If you sit next to Kadir, like moment 10, somehow the conversation will converge to Jim. I mean, okay.
Unlike you, where examples are from teaching.
Yes, yes. Unlike me, so if you sit with me after 10-15 minutes, it all boils down to teaching, because this is my world. So I am really absorbed in that. So, and whenever I think from that perspective, and if you think about somebody who is just living in this world and all he cares about is maximizing profit, but that person will, when Atik makes tea, they would say, well, this guy must have some benefit out of this. What is he trying to do by serving us tea? Because I am so much absorbed with this worldly perspectives, I am saying that, well, is he going to ask for $1? So when he offers tea, I say, no, thank you. Brother Bikan never drinks his tea, right? Because he's so much absorbed in worldly life. And he knows that Atik is eventually going to ask money from him, he thinks. He never drinks tea. So with that perspective, that person is absorbed by this. Now he says, if your intellect is only looking at things from a materialistic perspective, like being absorbed in the material realm. And we talked about this example before. So, like 2 scholars were given a book. You remember, like Quran was written with different letters. But one of the scholars are a perfect engineer, but he doesn't know how to read. He's absorbed in material relationships of these symbols. So he makes a perfectly detailed book analysis about how many statistical analysis of the letters, their shape, their position, and whatnot. But he never even considers that this is a book which has a meaning. So he's so much absorbed with, like, the other dimension never occurs to such a person. He might be a perfect statistical analyst, but has no depth whatsoever when it comes to meaning of it. So this is one example for being absorbed in material realm, which is what all our sciences are about. Here, when we talk about how blue eye happens, like it's genes or what you eat. There's no other thing even occurs to us. This is how much we are absorbed in the material realm, right? In practically speaking. Yeah.
So I just have a quick question that if you tell this to, let's say, a non-believer and you're giving them this logic, they can also, like, what if they say that back to us? Like, your point of view is so, like, narrowed towards, oh, there is a God, that's all you're seeing, and that you're not seeing all these things. Like, how would you, like, negate that?
So is this what we are saying? What do you think? There is a God. Is this how the statement starts? Let me ask it to everybody. Brother Bikan?
Jazakallah, and I was about to talk about that. So when we read this, author is writing this text to kind of against some attacks to Islam and so on. At that time, that was required, and he also defines the ways to have the belief. So when we try to apply the text to ourselves, right? We cannot read it as we have Iman. I already have established Iman. I'm already Muslim. Now I will read this and attack to unbelievers or protect myself from their attack and so on. But rather, we should read it as, okay, the author also describing what belief is, how belief should be. So going back to your question, then you cannot, according to this approach, you cannot say that I'm a Muslim, hence there must be a God because I'm a Muslim, right? My father said so. Then there must be a God, and I will look everything from this lens, that there must be a God. But rather, he says from the text that we just discussed, for instance, before that, your belief, if you want to call it as belief, must rely on what? Existent evidence. That's the belief, he says. So then you have to check yourself. Is that the case for me? I will look at the things in the creation without limiting myself, and we should open this up within this text. What does it mean, not limiting yourself? Without limiting yourself, you should look at the creation, see the existing qualities there. Okay? You say that, okay, I see that whoever is giving rise to existence of this thing that I'm holding must have an ultimate, the absolute power, because I can see how powerful a creator must be to create this. You have to see it. It must be something existing for you. And then you say, okay, I believe in the one who has the absolute power. This is your belief. If this is the case, then there is no like a limiting yourself. There is no a narrow view. It's not that, oh, there is a God who, like, she comes and asks you, who created this? Do you know what I mean? And you say, of course, God, man. Because there's a God, I'm a Muslim. He says, no, this is not the belief that I'm talking about. He says, you have to show, okay, let's look. What can give rise to that? What qualities we see there, right? These are the questions. So what happens on the other side, the limitations, when you ask, okay, let's see what qualities we see in the creation, the answer would be, what qualities are you talking about? There is no such thing as qualities. Your mind is making up. Why did you come to such a conclusion, you ask? And the answer is, come on, we are naturalists. Right? I heard this a lot during the seminars in academia. Since we are the naturalist, it starts with, since I'm a Muslim, the same way, same dogmatic view. Since we are naturalist, we cannot believe that there is such and such thing. So this is the limitation. I say, look at this tree. Don't you see an order there? There's an artful piece. And the reply would be, what are you talking about? It's just the wood. You're just making up, right? There's no such thing art. You say, why? There cannot be such thing as art. We're talking about naturalistic order of the things. You can only tell me about the atomic structure. That's the answer, right? It's not because they see something and like they see for instance, the opposite of order. Here is the unorderly thing that I prove that there's no order. It's not that way. It's what order are you talking about? Come on, don't be dogmatic or don't be ridiculous. It is art. Like a naked eye can see it, but you just deny it. The same way, like you ask the question, who do you think can create this? And you say, the answer would be, what do you mean, who? There is no such thing. Why? Because we are naturalists. We don't believe in anthropomorphizing, whatever the word is. You got it. We don't believe such things. The explanation must be within the system. This is the dogma of naturalism, right? If you have a book, you cannot talk about author. You can only talk about book. I mean, in the example, right? You can only talk about the ink, paper, leathers, the thickness, whatever. But you cannot say author because it's not there. The same thing within this natural order, you can only talk about things that we classify as natural. When you say, oh, there must be an absolute creator, you would just be labeled, oh, you're talking about the supernatural things. What does it mean, supernatural? With something that is outside the limits that I arbitrarily put. That's what it means, supernatural, right? If we were living, for instance, a 5th century back, And Maxwell comes and tells you that, oh, do you know what? There is something beyond this, the what is it? The motion related properties about the atom. There is something called magnetism. You would say, you're talking about the supernatural things, man. Like the limit that we put finishes the ends at the motion of the things. You cannot talk about the magnetism. It's the same way. The arbitrary limits, arbitrary boundaries, once you start talking about beyond them, it's called dogmatism or whatever, right? So it's completely different. Like, it's not that, oh yeah, there's God, and then.
So why did author say that? Why is he bringing up this topic? Again, before we start the journey, because this author really writes to common people. I have this tendency that, religious people are less complicated thinkers, but scientists are more complicated thinkers. They have a wider perspective. Their intellect is more open, wider. Author is claiming the opposite here. Despite that's an important claim here. He says, actually, the perspectives or the intellect is narrowed down with the materialist perspective. This is being a reason for the denial. It's not that, they started getting educated and now have a wider perspective, hence starting seeing that the religion sucks. This is not the case. But he's claiming just the opposite. What do you think? Does what he says matches what I am speaking or not? He's saying that their denial, let's say, the more you study sciences, the more people become atheists. This is why religious people would, not nowadays anymore, but maybe 30 years before, they will be reluctant to send their children to higher education. Sorry about that. So religious people were reluctant to send their kids to higher education. Why? Because if they study higher education, they become atheist. And then the atheist says, oh yeah, because our worldview was expanding, hence we see that the religion doesn't work. This is why the people, the unlearned and whatnot. Author is saying that, no, the more you study sciences, the more your perspective can get narrowed. I'm not talking about studying sciences with the lens of Quran. It's a separate thing. But we are talking about the materialistically studying sciences. It's going to make your perspective narrow. By the way, this is not the only thing. He also talked about ghafla, and he also talked about sins. He said these are also narrowing human intellect. Says, then you are not able to see the requirements of divine conclusions. What's divine conclusion? To be able to say that an all knowledgeable, all powerful creator is required, must exist to put this eye in the eye socket of this baby. The one who is capable of raising the sun and setting the sun, raising the clouds and everything, whomever put this eye to here must be the one who is capable of putting the sun over there. Like that vast of a power is being manifest if you carefully look at this eye, because it's working in harmony with the sun which is put over there. And this keeps changing. It's not that it's set up and it stays there. No, the system is constantly being changed. It's not a stable, it's not that the system is set up, the order is set up and it keeps functioning. No, it's an ongoing change, constantly changing. Which means whomever is maintaining all this must be all knowledgeable. What does the narrow perspective say? No, come on. Such an all knowledgeable thing, not possible. Seems it unlikely. And then instead says, well, it just happens by chance. This is the narrow perspective. Imagining it to be a work of chance that the eye is in here, totally unrelated to the sun, totally unrelated to anything else, and entertains the idea of it's happening by chance. Now we can compare the narrowness in here, so much so that chance becomes the savior of this perspective. Cannot attribute it to anything else, and forcefully, since there's no other way to attribute it to, says, well, it happens by chance. This is the narrow perspective that the author, I think, is mentioning. Yeah.
So the part I think was really important, on top of what you already said, hence taking pride in such knowledge as they have. They hasten to denial and negation. So I said, also the answer, and maybe a poor Dua's question, then can you give me the summary of everything? So I think it's specifically talking about the mind not the grasping the greatness or the necessary greatness. When you say, what is the word he used? Sublimity and grandeur. I don't know. I don't know about these words. The way I understand is just the greatness, like the incredibleness that you see, because we cannot understand that, or these people with narrow minds, because they cannot understand that, they prefer the denial. And this is mostly because, as Yusuf said, because of their ghafla, the ignorance, and then being in a lot of, the sinful activities, and also being, what was the word you said? Consumed, not consumed, but absorbed with the material, the worldview. So for that reasons, your mind becomes narrower, and you cannot grasp the idea of such greatness, incredibleness, or the infinity, whatever you want to say. So, okay, going back to this, taking pride in such knowledge as they have. So you study the human eye, and you see some greatness there, right? When you try to explain how human eye works, it's like you just feel speechless when you really study it. I'm not talking about the entire nervous system or whatever, just the eye. You feel speechless. You don't have much to say. You have this greatness there, you see, but because you cannot accept it, like, oh, there's an all-knowing, all-controlling, all-powerful thing. When you try to think about it, I will visit this later, what happens. You cannot grasp it. So what you say, there must be, this is, one of my professors was saying, oh, the human eye is the product of millions years of evolution, okay? And the emphasis there is not the evolution. The emphasis there is the millions years of evolution. So it's so great. That's the emphasis, actually, right? So I see something like greatness, but because my mind cannot grasp it, I have to, limit it to something that I know. The years and the word evolution. So I have to explain it this way. Otherwise, I have to accept that I cannot understand it. Right? You either say, I don't understand it, I'm sorry. Like, this greatness is beyond me. But because of your pride, you're the professor and you're talking to students, you say, oh, I understand it. And this is millions of billions of evolution. What did you give them, the students? Nothing. Did they understand anything more? No. You just, instead of saying that, my mind doesn't grasp this, you just use the knowledge, so-called knowledge that you have. So what happens when you try to understand it? Let's come there. I was reading it years ago. Famous philosopher, doesn't matter, which is the famous in some other domain, but he, for some reason, because of his pride, probably, he thought he could also write on theology as well. Why not? I'm a professor at the end, or the philosopher. So he's talking about the absolute knowing, all-knowing God, and he's proving that it cannot happen. Like there cannot be such thing as all-knowing, all merciful. I don't remember the quality there. But the way he does it is just like studying atom, the material science, right? So because he's so narrow, his mind is narrowed in this material world, he says, let's assume there is a God with the all-knowing, all-powerful. There is such a God. Let's assume. So what he's doing, he says, whatever my mind is grasped, they understand, this is God. The beyond cannot happen because, the limit is my mind. So he can say something like, let's assume there is such a God. So he doesn't stop and say that, wait a second, can I assume something like that? Can I even imagine something like that? He does not do that. Because for him, whatever he minds can assume is the only reality. Okay? So then he starts imagining or assuming a made-up God with all-knowing qualities. But what he means when he says all-knowing, it just, Yusuf knows 5, and this God knows 500. This is what all-knowing for him. Why? Because he has to think about numbers. Beyond numbers, there's no such thing for him, right? Hence, he say that, let's assume a God with 500 knowledge. Now I can show that there is 600 knowledge, and he doesn't know the remaining 100, something like that, right? So why? Because again, because of the pride and so on, he says the way I think in this material world has to be applicable when I think about such matters as well. So that's the narrowness as far as I understand this.
And in response, he is talking about how greatness is going to fix here. And when he talks about greatness, he gave a lot of examples. He said, Allahu Akbar. God is greater. And although they translate as most great, so Allah is greater than anything that you can imagine. So Allahu Akbar in this case is saying that incomprehensibleness of the source. What I observe requires a power and knowledge which is beyond my comprehension. This is going to fix the thing, rather than on the other case, as Brother Bikan was mentioning, with my materialist perspective, I am willing to encompass anything. If I cannot encompass it, I'm not accepting it, I'm not admitting it. So this is where now the distinction is coming from. And he gave the example from Prophet's way, an illiterate person from 14 centuries ago, and his understanding of the Creator. O you other than whose kingdom no kingdom exists, O you whose praise cannot be counted by his slaves, O you whose glory cannot be described by his creatures. So he's beyond everything. So this is the way the description is coming. O you whose perfection lies beyond the range of all vision, O you whose attributes exceed the bounds of all understanding, O you whose grandeur is beyond the reach of all thoughts, O you whose qualities man cannot fittingly describe, O you whose decree his slaves cannot avert, O you whose signs are manifest in everything. All these show that grandeur and sublimity constitute a necessary veil. Before we go to the main text, there is a Hadith Qudsi that's being mentioned here. Grandeur is my shield and sublimity my cloak. He interprets it within this context. What do you understand from this? Al-azamatu izari wal kibriya'u ridai. Like this is the hadith. The creator says, grandeur is my shield, al-azama, and kibriya'i, sublimity, is my cloak. Izar and rida is what people wear when they're in ihram, like two pieces of cloth. Creator is in Hadith Qudsi mentioning this as if I cover myself, like they are my veil, if you like. This is why the author used the word veil. Grandeur and sublimity is the veil for my eyes towards the Creator. Yes, where's the other microphone? We kept using one. Okay, can't pass it here.
Could it be like what we see of God? Because like we do see grandeur and sublimity, but like that's how we know of God. Like he's great and sublime, but like beyond that, like we don't know what he's like.
Yes. And also, veil is also hides something. It shows and also hides. Like in this case, grandeur, like his greatness and vastness can become as a veil, as a hiding, like to the one who realizes the Creator would say, everything testifies to the Creator. How can you deny? But for the materialist, what would they say? Oh, I don't see God anywhere. What are you talking about? So him being manifest everywhere is a manifestation of the grandeur. The very same thing that shows his presence everywhere could become a veil for those whose intellect is narrowed down to say that, well, I don't see where. What are you talking about? This being said, let's make an intro to the supreme sign. And I think we can now hear the other voice, which we didn't hear for a month, Sister Aisha Noor. Let's go with Sister Aisha Noor, the supreme sign.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Supreme sign, the observations of a traveler questioning the universe concerning his maker or her maker. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, the seven heavens and the earth and all that is in them extol and glorify him, and there is nothing but glorifies him with praise, while you understand not their glorifying. Indeed, he is most forbearing, most forgiving. The second station, in addition to explaining the above sublime verse, sets out the proofs, arguments, and meaning of the first station, which has been skipped. Since this sublime verse, which is from section 17, verse 44 of the Quran, like many other Quranic verses, mentions first the heavens, that brilliant page proclaiming God's unity, gazed on at all times and by all human beings with wonder and joy. In its pronouncement of the Creator of this cosmos, let us too begin with a mention of the heavens. Indeed, every voyager who comes to the hospice and the realm of this world opens his eyes and wonders who is the master of this fine hospice, which resembles a most generous banquet, a most ingenious exhibition, a most impressive camp, and training ground, a most amazing and wondrous place of recreation, a most profound and wise place of instruction. He asks himself, too, who is the author of this great book, and who is the monarch of this lofty realm? There first presents itself to him the beautiful face of the heavens, inscribed with the gilt lettering of the stars. That face calls him, saying, "Look at me, and I shall guide you to what you seek." He looks then and sees a manifestation of dominicality, performing various tasks in the heavens. It holds aloft in the heavens, without any supporting pillar, hundreds of thousands of heavenly bodies, some of which are 1,000 times heavier than the earth, and revolve 70 times faster than a cannonball. It causes them to move in harmony and swiftly without colliding with each other. It causes innumerable lamps to burn constantly without the use of any oil. It disposes of these great masses without any disturbance or disorder. It sets sun and moon to work at their respective tasks without those great bodies ever rebelling. It administers within infinite space, the magnitude of which cannot be measured in figures, should they stretch from pole to pole, all that exists at the same time, with the same strength, in the same fashion, manner, and mold, without the least deficiency. It reduces to submissive obedience to its law all the aggressive powers inherent in those bodies. It cleanses and lustrates the face of the heavens, removing all the sweepings and refuse of that vast assembly. It causes those bodies to maneuver like a disciplined army, and then making the earth revolve, it shows the heavens each night and each year in a different form, like a cinema screen displaying true and imaginative scenes to the audience of creation. There is within this dominical activity a truth consisting of subjugation, administration, revolution, ordering, cleansing, and employment. This truth, with its grandeur and comprehensiveness, bears witness to the necessary existence and unity of the Creator of the heavens, and testifies to that existence being more manifest than that of the heavens. Hence it was said in the first degree of the first station, there is no God but God, the necessary being, to whose necessary existence and unity the heavens and all they contain testify, through the testimony of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of subjugation, administration, revolution, ordering, cleansing, and employment, a truth vast and perfect and to be observed. Should I pause here?
Yeah. So this is the first station that we read as an example, but let's go to the very beginning. So the
Can I ask something?
okay.
I don't remember, maybe you already did this, but you given the background on this screen sign, like what's the content is, the guy is looking from, starting from the
Yeah.
sky and then going there and so on. So
Yes.
Give all this background.
Let me give it again.
Okay.
So this supreme sign is sort of the Mi'raj, the journey of Nursi. He has multiple examples of that, but the seventh ray, we can take it as an example of Mi'raj and how one can climb. And he's going to go through 33 stages, step by step. And the first step he takes is, as he starts, the observations of a traveler questioning the universe concerning his maker. And another example of this in Quran, we see Ibrahim alayhi salam having a similar journey. He is questioning the universe concerning his maker and saying, oh, stars, are you my maker? Oh, moon, or sun, are you my maker? So this example is step by step, you're traveling through the universe and saying, who is my maker? And the verse he started with, the seven heavens and the earth. So let me read Arabic as well. تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم إنه كان حليما غفورا. Let's focus on the verse. The seven heavens and the earth and all that is in them extol and glorify him, and there is nothing but glorifies him with praise. But you understand not their glorifying. Indeed, he is most forbearing, most forgiving. إِنَّهُ كَانَ عَلِيمًا غَفُورًا. So if just two comments about the verse, about some detail. First, this verse is talking about تُسَبِّحُ لَهُ السَّمَاوَاتُ السَّبْعُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَنْ فِيهِنْ, like the seven heavens and the earth and whomever is within it. وَمَنْ فِيهِنْ. So the word that's being used is man in there, which refers to conscious beings. And when we read this verse, depending on how you read Quran, you should ask the question, okay, how do I bear witness to that? Because even in the following part of the verse, when it says, but you do not understand their glorification. So what should this mean? Does this mean that you cannot understand their glorification? Like, what is the point of my Creator mentioning this? We should ask that question to ourselves. Seven heavens and the earth and whomever is in there glorifies the Creator. Okay, good news. But then he says, but you're not able to understand their glorification. What shall I take out of that? Because I remember reading this to a brother, and he said, oh yeah, this verse talks about angels, and yeah, they glorify, but we cannot understand them. Then why does my Creator talk about that? Like, is he mocking me, saying that, Atik, like, I mean, since you cannot know it, I'm just telling you, they do it, and yeah, you're doomed, you can never know it. How is this a guidance for me? Well, you can give me best the microphone.
This reminds me of that conversation that we had about painting and artists, and how a painting, when you look at it, would, ideally tell you about the artist. So you'll be like, wow, like this artist must really like, the color red, like like they must really like the fall season, like look at their choice, it's so good, like look at their attention to detail, it's so good. So when you look at a painting and you praise the painting, like you're going to be praising the artist. And in that way, like when we look at the world, like it should tell us about God. I think that's what I read as like glorifying. Like it tells you about its creator, like who it is that made it so real. Like if you look at a tree and you're like, wow, like it's so big, like it's so vast, this canopy is so beautiful. Who is it telling you about? So I think that's how I read it, as that it's telling me about its creator, but I don't understand it because I am, not conscious of it in the moment.
I guess one thing that I find like interesting is that like immediately following that you understand not their glorifying, the ayat says, indeed he is most forbearing, most forgiving. So it follows up with these two names, which I guess maybe should, I think, draw my attention. Like maybe it's not to like mock me and saying that, oh haha, you don't understand, or like the angels will understand or do this but you can't understand it, so just don't even worry about it. But perhaps it's more of like an invitation to use an invitation to try and like question like further, and like to maybe get to know my Creator through these names, and perhaps I can gain some sort of like understanding through that. And I guess maybe the first step is just to admit that, like, actually admit to myself that, yeah, I don't understand and I don't know. And I like need this guidance. So yeah, those were just some thoughts I had.
Once we went to like a rural town in Turkey when I was in undergrad. And we were having like some small camps for discussions like this. And a brother mentioned what he observed in there. He went to a discussion in this rural town, and he said there were just regular people sitting in the discussion environment. And if you look at them, they were like, you would say, cavemen, like people, like rural people, and like long beards and whatnot. So this is how he mentioned. He said you would consider them as cavemen. So, and he said, I led the discussion in the environment since I am coming from the capital city and I am a learned man and whatnot. He said, I did the first discussion. Then the second discussion, one of those cavemen led the discussion, he said, and I was appalled and ashamed of myself. Because initially he thought, looking at himself, he is the knowing guy. And those guys are just rural people, illiterate, or they wouldn't really know anything. But once they started talking, then he realized his ignorance and how they were glorifying, now I'm going to apply it here, glorifying their creator. But it took some time for him to ask them, like, how do you tell me my creator? So likewise, in this existence, we feel like as humans, we are this conscious beings and I get to know my creator, I do my prayer and whatnot. But is it only humans that glorify the creator? Actually, this verse says everything in the heavens and the earth and everything in between praises the creator. And goes one step further. There is nothing that doesn't glorify him. Have you asked them? So this should encourage me to ask them, as Erin was highlighting at the very end by highlighting these two divine names, saying that you are in your ignorance, not asking them, but your maker and the maker of all these things is forbearing and forgiving. So go back and ask them. Ask them, how do you tell me about my maker? Then you will start hearing that they talk to you. Then you will start hearing their speech. And that's what the author is doing. He says, then let us start by asking to the stars, how do you tell me about my maker? And this is how he started. And this is a good practice to do for ourselves, as to read the divine names within the creation. Because like this week, I was realizing how dry my du'as became. And I realized that I was just saying, oh, God, give me this, oh, God, give me that. But just I said, oh, khaliqu kulli shay at some point. And I felt like this really started shaking something in me because, oh, the creator of everything. Now I'm getting to know my creator as the creator of everything, not simply as, oh, Rabb, Ya Rabb, but creator of everything. So do I see him as the creator of everything? To the extent that I see this, asking something from the creator of everything is way different than simply asking from, Ya Rabb, give this to me. Still I am asking, oh, creator of everything, give this to me. I felt like it means much different than, so in this journey, this is what the author will start seeing. Does everything have the same creator? Or is it just my assumption? So this is why he starts from the stars and sees, and in between the lines, he is referring to the verses like stars standing there without a, pillar. What does that mean, for example? Stars standing there without a pillar. Like Quran attracts our attention to the skies as such. But what does this practically mean to you? Of course, they shouldn't have a pillar. I mean, when I was reading this, and when Quran talks about stars without pillars, I say, of course, stars wouldn't have a pillar. What do you mean? There is, gravitational force. Why should there be a pillar? Was my reaction with my narrow intellect. What do you think about that? Is this does this journey sound meaningful to you? Yes.
So about the journey, it's just even the beginning part when he says, the person, what say, yeah, okay, the traveler. The traveler is trying to learn about his maker, and he's asking to universe. So even that part, I guess, deserve being highlighted. Like, you're trying to learn about the maker, then the author says, I mean, look at the things that he made. Right? This is the way to learn about the maker, looking at the things that he makes. So this is something that we are not much familiar with. Maybe we should be, acknowledging that first. So today I was listening to the Khatib for, the Jummah prayer, and he's talking about the angels. The way he explained, he said, as a Muslim, you have to believe in angels. And here are the things that you should believe in angels. They don't have, the bodies like us. They don't have gender. They have that many wings. They can take this shape, but they cannot take that shape, and so on and so forth. So this is the approach we usually follow. And when I, talk about it this way within such a context and so on, it sounds funny, but usually this is the approach that we take. I want to learn about my creator. I go to my sheikh and ask him, okay, tell me about my creator. And he starts listing the names or the attributes and ask me to memorize. And when I memorize, I say, okay, now I know about my creator. There's no journey, no travel, no asking, nothing. What author is describing here is significantly different. We should make this clear first. So as Dua was giving the example, if you want to know about a painter, you have to study her or his paintings. You have to. Otherwise, you don't deserve to have a title of, I don't know, the historian of art. You cannot have this title. I apologize. Your mentor would say, if you are doing a PhD there, for instance, right? The same way, if you want to know about your maker, you have to study what he makes. The universe, the creation, everything in front of us. You have to study it. You have to ask from it. And this is what the first ayah that he gives, as if saying that if you are mocking such a traveler, look at Quran. This is what Quran also suggests. Quran tells us that you have to look at everything in heaven and the earth and everything in between. And as you said, whoever exists within them, you have to ask them. You have to see how they glorify their maker. What does it mean? What qualities they refer to about their makers. You look at the artwork, right? This one. So it glorifies. It glorifies its maker. How? It says, my maker knows how to put letters on a straight line. Like it's not crooked. That much I can see. I apologize. So that's the glorification I see. The letters told me that their maker, the artist, can put them on a straight line. Unlike me. If I start lighting here, I end there, right? So this is the glorification I see. I look at the artwork more, or I see, okay, there is another element of it, which is frame. Now frame starts glorifying its maker. It says, my maker knows about the colors. Look how the color of the frame matches the color of, whatever inside. So this is the glorification I see there. And it glorifies. It tells me about the maker. Now I can not peaceful, but I am convinced I can easily say that, oh, there is an artist somewhere who can draw such and such, the artwork and there is also a frame maker who can do this and that, I can surely say that, I can testify that. This is my belief now. This is Iman. And I have this Iman, how? By asking the artwork. I know about the maker through what he makes. The same way I look at the creation, whatever qualities I see there, these are the glorifications. I say that there must be such and such maker of these things. This is my Iman now. So this is very different. The same applied to angels, for instance. If Guy was following such an approach, he would say, okay, today we will talk about angels. Look at your life, he would say, right? Look at your life. Look at the things that you experience. You have such and such aspect of it, right? In your life, sometimes you experience this and that. From that, he would conclude that, oh, then there must be an angel. And if you are not denying yourself, you cannot deny the existence of angels, he would say. Instead of you are a Muslim, hence you have to believe in angels. He would look at the things, in this example, that tells me about the angels, and then say that, okay, there must be angels then. So this is a different way.
Because in our practical life, this sounds like when you are applying for a job, you can send a CV. But nowadays, making CVs are easy. They take you and do a coding interview. They would like to see your claims in action, because your product is going to show all your qualities rather than you simply claiming, oh, this is who I am. In Scripture, the Creator is saying that this is who I am. But the Creator isn't leaving it there. He says, here is my action as well. Look, the creation is my action. And you can verify my CV by looking at my product, actually. In the speech, he says, I am all powerful. Look at the action, look at his artwork, look at the skies, as we now start from the skies, how it is being made. Like so many things are moving at the same time with utmost speed. All these stars are being shiny, if you like, light bulbs. Like in many houses, if the light bulb dies, and it's father's responsibility to change the bulbs, and it just stays like this for 2 weeks. Wife keeps saying that, oh, change it. Father keeps ignoring. 2 weeks later, wife gets angry and says, and then it's never happening in this existence, though. Like the lamps are being maintained very beautifully. So the house stays clean. Alhamdulillah, right? Look at the universe. Yeah. So universe is being kept so clean. So these are the things that I am expected to observing. How come this is happening? We will eventually see that the face of earth also being kept clean. Wherever human is not messing up, you see that wherever an animal dies, immediately some soldiers are being sent there. Like first the big birds take their share, then small bacteria, then things happen, and eventually within 1 month or so, just bones left. 1 year later, not even the bones left. So cleaning up is happening at every level, for example. I should ask, whomever is tidying here is really, by his actions, he speaks. So my journey is going to start in here. And in this first example, he tells us about the heavens. And in the summary, those paragraphs written in italic is sort of the summary of his observation, and he concludes with names in there. Says, I'll just, since we have 2 minutes, I'll just conclude with here. There is no God but God, the necessary being. I'll just focus on this one, the necessary being. So in the way, in the original text, the summaries are written in Arabic. So it says, لا إله إلا الله الواجب الوجود الذي دل على وجوب وجوده. So for the creator, he says he is wajib al-wujud, necessarily existent one. Okay, but he says, دل على وجوب وجوده, and the evidences for his necessary existence is as such. Like if you see a pie in the house, you see the pie, and you are sure that the pie exists, you should be more sure that somebody who cooked the pie exists also. Because the existence of pie testifies more than its own existence to the existence of the maker of the pie. So wajib al-wujud means this. So you do observe this existence, this universe. You see an apple, you see the sun, you see a baby. You should be more sure than the existence of the baby that there must exist a maker of the baby. His existence, wujubu wujudihi, but it doesn't stay just there. Like somebody must exist, but what is that somebody? Who is that somebody? It's not simply, yeah, a body must exist. If it is pie, it's going to be the qualities that you observe in the pie testifies to his existence. If you are looking at a baby, qualities that are being manifest in the baby testifies to his existence. I get to know him through that. Getting to know him through this new names, new dimensions, if you like. So like within marriage, you tend to get to know your wife or husband from different angles over time. Or you say, oh, I didn't know that, like, I don't, surprises, right? So she was asking for me to make some surprises to her. And nowadays I'm making surprises to her. So, but cheap surprises. I just go and hug her as a surprise.
Maybe I should take the microphone.
And then she says, oh, this is a very cheap surprise. So anyways, so new aspects, with new aspects of that person, you get to know that person more. And otherwise it was just a, okay, engineer, like not so funny guy. But now you start seeing it as, oh, he can also make jokes. So now more reasons to love that person, right? So there's no God but God, the necessary being, to whose necessary existence in unity the heavens and all they contain testify. Through the testimony of sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of subjugation. Look at all those heavenly bodies subjugating, like the moon and the stars and the sun. Because if you open your Azan app, it immediately tells you the exact moment sun will rise. There is no, latency, no delay, there's no rebellion against this. So perfect subjugation. Whomever is making it, like in Philadelphia subway, it's not subjugating to the commander that much. There are always delays, right? So, but for the sun, no such delay. Whomever is taking care of it, super punctual, or the command is so strong. Administration, revolution, ordering, cleansing, employment, a truth vast and perfect and to be observed. So these are the things which testifies by their orderliness, by their subjugation to the necessary existence of a one, which is beyond my comprehension. This is why he started with Allahu Akbar. He is beyond my comprehension, yet all of them praises him, testifies to him. Seeing this, observing this now, when I raise my head to the skies and see a star there, this is what I will start hearing from a star. To sabbihu, like they glorify. You know the word tasbih, like after the prayer you make subhanallah, subhanallah. So I used to think that only humans make tasbih. Actually, there was a documentary when I was a small kid, and they were talking about trees making tasbih. And since it's a documentary, they showed the tree at the nighttime, and from behind they gave the voice. So, and I was saying that, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to become a saint. and I will start hearing their subhanallah, subhanallah, because if in the documentary they voiced over, well, then I'm going to develop this sense. My eye. Do they say it? The eye of heart, the eye of the heart. It's going to open, and the ear. Then I will start hearing them. Now the author is training us to be able to hear them actually.
Not this way.
With the voiceover? Yeah, not with the voiceover. So, because for the person who doesn't know Arabic, these letters do not speak to them. But once you learn Arabic, you will start hearing what those symbols tell you. Likewise, the stars was not speaking to me. They were glorifying, but I was not understanding them. But now that I learned how to read, now I do see their glorification. So this would be our journey. And this is what Mi'raj is. This is the way sainthood happens. So in this case, everybody has a share from sainthood, can have a share. Let me correct. Everybody can have a share from sainthood, meaning getting closer to your creator. And this is the journey that we are now taking. And that's why prophethood is important, because prophet taught us or walked through this journey. This is the meaning of prophet's Mi'raj, and the author is exemplifying this to us, following the footsteps presented to us in Quran, now that inshallah we can also become saints soon. Saints in making. Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين